United Methodist Church in downtown Kinston, North Carolina. Welcome to our Wesley Bible class, and appreciate so many of you watching. Last week we apparently had over 80 people that were viewing our class. So be careful what you say, class. Okay, it's getting out there. Okay, we haven't found any sponsors yet, but we're working on it. Just wanted you to know. Today we're going to be talking about the last part of chapter 8, and then we're going into a really interesting chapter 9, where we learn how to cheat. So, then Joshua built on Mount Ebal. This is verse 30, chapter 8. Mount Ebal on an altar to the Lord, the God of Israel, just as Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded the Israelites, as it is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of unhewn stones on which no iron tool has been used. So it's interesting, they're talking about iron tools. So we're in the Iron Age at this point. And they offered on it burnt offerings to the Lord and sacrificed offerings of well-being. These stones were brought up from the river while they were crossing the Jordan. And so they built the altar from the stones out of the river. And there in the presence of the Israelites, Joshua wrote on the stones a copy of the law of Moses that he had written. So he couldn't hew it in, he had to write on it. Okay, so this is not going to be a lasting testimony. You know, it'll wear off after a while. But it might be the law of Moses after a while, who knows. All Israel, alien as well as native born, with their elders and officers and their judges, stood on opposite sides of the ark in front of the Levitical priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, half of them in front of Mount Gerizim and half of them in front of Mount Ebal, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded earlier, that they should bless the people of Israel. And afterwards he read all the words of the law, blessings and curses, according to all that is written in the book of the law. There was not a word of all that Moses commanded that Joshua did not read before all the assembly of Israel, and the women and the little ones and the aliens who resided among them. Okay, so this tells you that it wasn't just Israelites that crossed over. There were aliens that attached themselves to this movement. Okay, non-Jews, they were Gentiles. Another thing is that they're talking about Levitical priest. Well, what happened to the Aaronic priest? We don't have a lot of detail on that so far. But what happened to, Moses' brother and the lineage of the priest from Moses' brother? That was supposed to be in perpetuity. Evidently, the Levites staged a coup of some sort and took over the priesthood. So now you have the Levitical priests, not the Aaronite priests. And who are the Levites? The Levites are the enforcers. They're the workers in the temple. Okay, they're supposed to take care of all the administrative and choreography and stuff in the temple, but they are also scattered throughout the tribes. They are the regulators and the enforcers of the law. And evidently they got to a point where they had more authority, or they just simply decided that we're doing all this, we're going to be, they were supposed to be like the slaves of the Aaronite priesthood. And they are no longer the slaves of the Aaronite priesthood. They're in charge. Okay. Now those must have been pretty big stones if he wrote all the law on the stones. We're not just talking about the basic 10. We're talking about all the law of Moses was written on those stones. Okay? Now, you figure this is going to take a while. Okay? So they're going to be there for a while he's writing on the stones, because that's a lot of law to write. Okay, now, here we get into chapter 9, and I think chapter 9 is really cool. It's got a lot to talk about here. Now, when all the kings who were beyond the Jordan in the hill country and the lowland, all along the coast of the great sea toward Lebanon, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. They gathered together with one accord to fight Joshua and Israel. Now, you have to understand that these people didn't like each other very much. All right? When you start talking about the Hittites, they're up there in Assyria and southern Turkey. That's where they come from. And they've conquered a lot of the area that was Canaan. And now you have these different tribes in Canaan. You can imagine the tensions, the territorial tensions that exist between them. There were territorial tensions that took place between the tribes of Israel. So you can imagine all these, like a lot of these Canaanites, they came from the Aegean area. And they weren't even locals when they came in. So, and they got the prime territory too. They got like Gaza and the hill country just behind the Gaza. So, there's tensions, but these Israelites present such a threat that they're willing to work together, form a coalition to fight Israel together. But when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, they on their part acted with cunning. They went and prepared provisions and took worn-out sacks for their donkeys. Sacks. I was wondering about that myself. I gotta get my glasses here. Peggy tells me. For the donkeys, and wineskins worn out and torn and mended, with worn-out patched sandals on their feet, worn-out clothes, and all their provisions were dry and moldy. They went to Joshua in the camp of Gilgal and said to the Israelites, "We have come from a far country, so now make a treaty with us." But the Israelites said to the Hivites, "Perhaps you live among us. Then how can we make a treaty with you?" They said to Joshua, "We are your servants." And Joshua said to them, "Who are you? And where do you come from?" They said to him, "Your servants have come from a very far country, because the name of the Lord your God, for we have heard a report of him that all he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites, who were beyond the Jordan, King Sihon of Heshbon and King Og of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth. So our elders and all the inhabitants of our country said, 'Take provisions in your hand for the journey, go to meet them, and say to them, we are your servants. Come now and make a treaty with us. Here is our bread. It is still warm. It was still warm when we took it out of our houses as our food for the journey on the day we set out to come to you, but now it is dry and moldy. These wineskins were new, and when we filled them, and see, they are burst, and these garments and sandals of ours are worn out from the very long journey.' So the leaders partook of their provisions and did not ask directions from the Lord." They did not ask directions of the Lord. See? All right. "And Joshua made peace with them, guaranteeing their lives by a treaty, and the leaders of the congregation swore an oath to them." Okay. But when 3 days had passed, after they had made a treaty with them, they heard that they were their neighbors and were living among them. So the Israelites set out and reached their cities on the third day. Now the cities of Gibeon and Shepherah, Beerot, and Kiriath Jearim. But the Israelites did not attack them, because the leaders of the congregation had sworn to them by the Lord, the God of Israel. Then all the congregation murmured against the leaders. But all the leaders said to all the congregation, "We have sworn to them by the Lord, the God of Israel, and now we must not touch them. This is what we will do to them. We will let them live, so that wrath may not come upon us because of the oath that we swore to them." The leader said to them, "Let them live." So they became woodcutters and drawers of water for all the congregation, as the leaders had decided concerning them. Okay. So let's go on a little bit more. Joshua summoned them and said to them, "Why did you deceive us?" Well, duh. "We were very far from you, while in fact you were living among us. Now therefore you are cursed, and some of you shall always be slaves, woodcutters and drawers of water for the house of my God." They answered Joshua, "Because it was told to your servants for a certainty that the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you all the land and to destroy the inhabitants of the land before you. So we were in great fear for our lives, because of you and did this thing. Now we are in your hand. Do as it seems right, good and right in your sight to do to us. This is what he did for them. He saved them from the... But on that day, Joshua made them woodcutters and drawers of water for the congregation and for the altar of the Lord to continue to this day. All right, so they weren't woodcutters and drawers of water for everybody. They were woodcutters and drawers of water for the temple or the tabernacle, okay? All right, what does this tell us? Well, one of the things that it tells us is that God loves sneaky things. God loves sneaky people and rewards sneaky people and thinks that people who are really clever deserve a good place in the kingdom. All right? Take a look. Here you had Samson. Okay? Samson was a sneaky guy. He was always playing tricks on the Philistines. You know, they found out about the tricks and they attacked him. And Samson killed, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of Philistines with the jawbone of an ass. And I know that it seems like a primitive weapon, but many friendships are killed with the same weapon today. Just saying.
I agree.
But also you have Jacob. Jacob was a sneaky guy and cheated his brother out of his birthright, and God went along with it just fine, okay? And Jacob got the blessing. Then you get into all kinds of deception. There was, the woman who accepted a general who was fleeing because he lost the battle to Israel, and she took him into her tent, and among other things, put a tent stake through his head, and that was cheating, but that was okay. You had David, who was, while he was hanging out with the Philistines, going into different Gentile towns and settlements and killing everybody and taking all their stuff and coming back and lying about it, and that was perfectly fine. Then you had stories in the New Testament where Jesus was using sneaky people in parables, and with the talents, one guy just didn't invest his stuff, didn't take a risk, and he buried it in the ground, and he ended up losing everything, and he wasn't sneaky enough. He wasn't. God likes people who take initiative, and these people took an initiative, and God rewarded it. They were supposed to get killed, and they didn't get killed because they were sneaky, and they didn't join the coalition. So here you have a violation of God's intent to clear the area. Okay, so they've now got this Gentile enclave, which they could have looted and killed everybody. Okay, and they ended up not getting anything but woodcutters and bearers of water for the tabernacle. So what do you think of that?
Well, there's still consequences for not obeying God.
That's true. Samson was not very good in operational security, I'll say that. Not wise to sleep with the enemy.
David was punished.
David was punished.
And to this day, Israel is suffering for not obeying God because of all the people that attack them.
That's interesting. That's an interesting point of view.
But I think it shows God's grace that He let them take these people in.
Yeah. I mean,
In the Old Testament.
God didn't come down on the Israelites because of the fact that they got snookered. They didn't get punished for it like they got punished when somebody kept the loot.
Well, for Abraham didn't obey God, so we have the Arab people. When he told him there would be a descendant, and he didn't wait for
He didn't wait for God to work his thing.
Right,
Right. He tried to get ahead of it.
right.
Okay. All right. I don't know that Israel's being punished for that today.
Well, they're being attacked by.
No, they're being, I don't think because they are, oh, man. Israel was attacked as soon as it was born,
Yeah, that's true.
before they were able to do anything against anybody. And it's been going on for a long time. I'm not sure that I'd lay this on,
Beginning.
on Israel's feet. But to say that these are not ancient animosities would be to miss the point. They are ancient animosities. They go way back, and you can find, that's the problem, when people don't get beyond the stories and the standards of the late Bronze Age, you end up with contemporary problems and wars, and some countries are trying to get beyond it. Pay very close attention to what's happening in Syria. Okay, Syria is making overtures to Israel, and they eventually, I think, are going to join the Abraham Accords. We were talking last week about that pipeline. That pipeline will go through Israel, but it might also branch up through Syria or Lebanon. Lebanon's now thinking seriously about their relationship with Israel, and it's not cost effective for them to have other people in their country fighting wars from their territory. And so the Lebanese army is beginning to drive Hezbollah even further out of power. So things are starting to come together in that part of the world, and I think, it's not going to be an easy thing to untangle, but at least they're trying to untangle it. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what the Middle East looks like in a year. I think it's going to be very, very different than what it is now. Give it a year.
It's never worked out.
And
Look
it
back
never
through all of
will.
history. I kind of agree with Sandra. When Abraham had relations with the maid and Esau. And,
At Sarah's request.
well, that's kind of like
That was Sarah's idea.
That's kind of like the Apple deal, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that was Sarah's idea.
Well, he told Adam to eat the apple.
And Abraham could have said, no, I'm waiting for you.
That's right. But he's just like an old man.
Yeah, he ain't getting any younger, Sarah's a bit past her prime, Medicare's going to have to pay for that pregnancy. I don't know. So
Anyway, Esau, and then Esau left, and God told him, you're going to be head of a great nation,
yeah,
a lot of people. And seems to me like they've warred ever since the beginning. And of course, there's times when Israel was no longer even a nation, but they never quit fighting each other, hating each other. I mean, the Arabs hate the Jews, a lot of them,
Yes.
most of them. And so I don't know how you reconcile that.
money.
Well,
Money.
but the
That's
Arabs have had money.
bottom line.
oil-
Okay,
The oil
bottom
has
line.
given them riches beyond what most countries will ever have.
And
they've
yeah.
squandered a lot of it away.
Yes.
They used it to build up their arsenal to fight Israel, because they were basically pagans. They were shepherds and living on the country. They had no money, they had no weapons. And then this money has made them able to have an air force, not much of an air force, but an army. And
Oh,
to
yeah,
man
big Air
themselves
Force.
And buy rockets and
Yep.
drones and all this stuff.
Yep.
And what are they used it for? They use it to fight Israel. So,
They used it to fight Iraq.
well, yeah, but they used it to fight Israel too. And they're all warring factions. I mean, you take all of the Arab countries, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, they not only hate Israel, but they kind of hate each other. But they don't hate each other like they hate the Israelis, so.
I don't know, there's a lot of animosity between the different factions of Islam.
And I think a lot of times it's who the leader is. I mean, you get these crazy leaders, you get them all over.
Here we go. That's exactly the old, that's one kind of thing. But you take a look at who's leading Saudi Arabia these days, who's leading UAE, who's come into Syria, what's happening with the leadership of Lebanon. You know what these guys are looking at? They're looking at money. And they're saying supporting the Palestinians has not been cost effective for generations. Okay? Not only is it not cost effective, but we don't really want those people as refugees in our country because they're trouble. All right? So what's the alternative? The alternative now is, if we want prosperity, if we want a secure way of moving our oil, if we want to have tourists come to the area, two things have to happen. One of them is we have got to scale back Sharia law to the point that people will feel comfortable coming to our country who are not Muslim. Okay? And the other thing they've got to do is make peace with Israel so that we don't have all this mess going on all the time and we don't have these tensions happening. And we can make money if we do this.
That's the smartest leaders they've ever had.
They are the smartest leaders they have
They've never
had since the British decided to make kingdoms.
Yes.
Okay? Stupid. But, you know, that's what's coming. That's what's coming. These people all see an opportunity for prosperity. It doesn't do the Egyptians any good to have the Houthis shutting down the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. You know? It doesn't do any good for the Arabs to have the Straits of Hormuz threatened. It doesn't do any, I mean, why do we, and they're asking themselves, why do we have to live with this? And they don't. And as far as building up their weapons, yes, they've built up weapons, they've built up all kinds of weapons. They have magnificent air forces, okay? Flown primarily by expatriates. Okay, retired or recently, you know, discharged American pilots.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all of that, I mean, I've had a little bit of experience with this. They do not like to read manuals. Okay, they do not like to read manuals. And a lot of the jobs that they get are from nepotism. So if you really want your tanks to roll and your airplanes to fly, you have to get some foreigner in there to maintain them. Okay? So, I mean, you look at what happened just before Desert Storm, during Desert Shield. The Saudis had an air force, they had a pretty good tank force, you know, and all of that. All the people who maintained their equipment, operated their equipment, were getting on planes and getting out of Saudi Arabia. Until Bush said, let's send in the 82nd Airborne if it's okay with you guys. And they said, yeah, it's okay with us guys. So they sent in the 82nd Airborne, and all of a sudden, the expats stopped fleeing. And then their trucks could work and their tanks could work, okay? They could never use that weaponry effectively to attack Israel because the wrong people were operating it. All we had to do was put out the word that we're canceling all your visas or your citizenship if you continue to support this country and attack Israel. And all of a sudden they don't have a maintenance force, they don't have operators, they just don't, you know. It's that simple. Yeah, on paper they have the thing. Okay, but that's all it is. And if they don't have our support to go forward with any kind of an operation, basically, it's a junkyard. And they're looking at it and saying, you know, we can't really effectively attack Israel, so, you know, the Iranians are trying it through proxies. Look what it's gotten them. let's work a deal. Let's be a Gibeonite. Let's work a deal. And we don't have to have animosity. And think how nice it's going to be if people can go to the east bank of the Gulf of Aqaba to this big tourist attraction the Saudis are trying to build. And think how nice it's going to be in Gaza. Think how nice it would be. What kind of money could we make if the Suez Canal is flowing with no opposition? And the leaders are now looking at it from a much more pragmatic viewpoint. And it's much easier to make a deal. You take a look at what happened during the time of Solomon, who was a pagan. I mean, Solomon was just a pagan. The temple that he built was one of many, and they weren't all to God. But you didn't have wars with Solomon. Okay? This is the second king after David. This nation is not real strong when Solomon takes over. But what does he do? He goes around and makes deals. He makes deals. And so through trade, instead of war, he becomes incredibly wealthy. Because you look at what's going on in Gaza now. Whoever wins in Gaza has got a big bill to pay to put it back together again. Gaza is not going to be cost effective for another 10, 15 years. So, what do you really win? What do you really win? So, what Solomon said is, let's make peace. Let's not make war. Let's make deals. And he did. He was the great deal maker. He had a huge military to back him up, which is why he was able to make deals. But, that's how it works. But God wants us to be, as Jesus said, wise as serpents and gentle as lambs. We have really been emphasizing in Christianity the gentle as lambs part. But we have not been wise as serpents.
There
We
are
have
so many, what's the right word, different sects or whatever,
Yeah.
that they're never going to get together. It's been this way for 5,000 years? And just because it seems like it might be going a little bit better, well, they tried that with Sadat and,
Yeah, the Brotherhood knocked him off.
yeah, well,
Yeah. And what
some
did,
other brotherhood will knock somebody else off. And it's just going to go right back to where it was.
guess who knocked off the Brotherhood?
I don't know.
The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia.
Okay. Well,
I mean, if it's different now, it'll be, I mean, if it's different, it'll be the first time it's ever been. I mean,
That's right.
if it lasts,
That's
it will
right.
be the first time it ever happened.
Well, I don't know how long it'll last, but I do think as long as everybody is making money out of it, it'll last.
But Jesus said money is the root of all, didn't he say that?
The love of money is.
Love.
We done got a couple examples like Qatar.
Yes.
If they'll look and see what Qatar has done with tourism and this kind of stuff, they'll see. They'll see it works.
Yeah.
But they're so stupid and bullheaded that they've never, they got the oil, so hey, we're just going
They-
to kill everybody.
The Qataris are good at playing both ends. They really are. But you've got to realize the biggest U.S. air base in the world is in Qatar. It's huge. So, they've got to align themselves where the money is.
I hate to bring this up, but I've been reading so much online this week about the flooding
Yes.
in Texas. And, some of the liberal comments are that the people in charge are too worried about the life to come instead of the life we're living now.
Oy vey.
I know, it is, these people, these liberal people or whoever, the ones that don't believe in God, and it's been very interesting reading how people have talked about this whole situation and how, God, the whole thing about God is in control and he let, it's a lot to think about. What do you think about that comment, though? We're more Christians or whatever, we're more worried about the life and to come.
As much as Christianity promotes, all right, as much as Christianity promotes the concept of heaven, it has not become a death cult. It has not. There are some Christians who would love to hasten the day when Christ returns and destroys everything, and okay, they are what I consider Shiite Christians because they got the same concept. All right, but Jesus' concept is not that. Jesus' concept is that we pray that God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And the mechanism for that is through people who believe in him. So it's up to, as far as the Christian orientation on this, is that it's our responsibility to bring this about. Just like he told Abraham in the first covenant, through you the nations of the world will be blessed. Okay, well, we're not seeing that happen a whole lot. Not in the Old Testament. It's not that, you don't see that blessing happening very much in the Old Testament. It's actually counter to everything. But Jesus picks up on it in the New Testament and brings us back to the original covenant, that through Christianity, through the people who call themselves, and not just Christians, Jews as well, but people who follow, who believe in the biblical God, are supposed to be a blessing to others. They're supposed to be. And so you see a lot of Jewish charitable organizations, and they're not working against the economies of the countries that they're in. They provide good banking services and trade in high value commodities and things like that. And you look at that and you say, and most of it is really just mom and pop stuff, mom and pop shops, and things like that. But it's not counter culture, it is promoting the economies where they are.
But when there is a disaster, the Christians show up.
The Christians show up. So if we're only interested in heaven, then what are we doing looking for bodies in Texas?
Exactly. Or the North Carolina mountains, or just
Yeah.
hurricanes. It's always,
I can,
mercy shows up first, and Samaritan's Purse, and they're the ones with boots on the ground immediately.
exactly. When I was in the National Guard, I was at the state headquarters, and whenever there was a disaster and I got mobilized for state duty, I went to the state headquarters and helped manage disaster operations. Okay? So I saw how effective the National Guard was. And I was going to grad school at the time, and I wrote a paper about disaster work, and in my paper I postulated that these NGOs and religious organizations couldn't be as effective as the National Guard because we had such control over what was taking place, and we had resources that we could mobilize and bring immediately. And then I went over and took over the church's stuff for disasters. And let me tell you something. The resources that we bring are phenomenal. And it looks like a conglomeration, yeah, because you got different denominations doing different things. The Salvation Army is running warehouses, the Mennonites are building houses, and you got Catholics bringing money, and you got Methodists bringing teams, and you got Baptists bringing teams, and And let me tell you something. I put together we worked on, there was but not effective, an interfaith organization to try and coordinate all this stuff. It was like herding cats. But I was finally able to get Baptist men materials into Salvation Army warehouses that were operated by Mennonites. And, you know, and I was able to use Catholic social ministry money to buy materials for Methodist teams to build things. And, you know, we were able to get them to cooperate and coordinate and to set up disaster recovery for their community. That was what we were all about. I got Church World Service funds. And God knows, everybody hates that really liberal organization, but they had a lot of money. And we brought it in to North Carolina to set up these community groups. It was a really effective model. And I'm just telling you that, yes, the National Guard plays a huge role. Everybody has got a specialty. Everybody's got a specialty. And each one of them manages it a little bit differently. Okay? But National Guard will bring food supplies that are donated by religious groups into communities where other vehicles can't get there. You know? So there is that sense of cooperation. This last disaster in the Hill Country in North Carolina, that really broke down a lot. But it's not for want of trying. You know? I mean, the Guard showed up. And these religious organizations showed up, and sometimes they had to work around each other because they were setting up barriers to be effective. But it was the most ham-handed thing I've ever seen.
You know, the people that put us down or, you know, don't believe, and I mean, they just see that, I think of the song, they know we're Christians by our love, you know.
Yeah, and they hate it. I'm serious.
Right.
I'm serious. And, you know, if they don't like it, why don't they show up?
Right.
You know, where are they? I remember we had some religious communities that were not participating in disaster work. And I finally started saying, you know, so where are you? You know, you look after your own, but you don't look after your neighbors who are not your own. So how Christian is that? And, you know, you claim to be. But, you know, the just us kind of stuff, that doesn't work in disasters. That doesn't work in disasters. So, but anyway, getting back to the point of this is that God does not necessarily condemn people who are devious in the Bible. If the ultimate goal is consistent with God's plan, God is willing to bring about God's plan by hook or by crook. Now that goes to the Marxist idea that the ends justify the means. And the question is, where do you find the balance in that?
So if God had wanted to punish Joshua for not asking him what he thought, who would he be punished?
Joshua and the council were responsible for this decision.
So he would have punished Joshua for not killing these people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like Moses was punished by not being allowed into the promised land.
He struck a rock.
Well, yeah, whatever you do.
You know, sometimes it seems very petty, but I digress. So, it's hard for me to get again, and I keep saying this. So these people were devious. They were going to be slaves. They were going to be woodworkers. They were going to be at the beck and call of the Jewish people.
Yes.
It's hard for me to understand how God would say, you didn't kill these people. I told you to kill these people. You didn't ask me. I just struggle with that.
But I think God was amused. That's why this story got in there. God has a sense of humor. God really does have a sense of humor, and God loves to see somebody get snookered. You look at all of creation, okay, in the animal world. How do animals survive? They survive by cheating whoever it is that's trying to kill them. It's with camouflage or stealth or heightened sense or whatever. But God has provided for millions of years, God has been provided ways for things that compete with each other to cheat on each other. It's part of creation. It's the natural order of things. Doesn't it? Okay, well,
They pretty much camouflaged themselves.
they did.
as
That's exactly
sojourners
right.
From a far off land, and then, you know, I guess they never did, you don't see anywhere else that happened. They didn't raise up later and attack the Jews.
No,
They didn't build an army and go back and attack the Jews.
No.
They were complacent, and at least I guess that happened, you don't even hear about it anymore, at least what I've seen.
no, they did okay.
Yeah.
Okay? So, in God's mind,
Okay.
let's make a deal. Okay, well, God bless you all. I'll see you next week, and we'll move on to chapter 10, see what happens there.
Thank you.